What celebrities generally perceived as nice have actually done awful things. Story 1. John Stamos is generally perceived as a nice guy who elicits a sense of nostalgia in millennials. He once joked about orchestrating the assault of a woman. She had agreed to activity with him. They began with the lights off and he says he left and sent a friend into the room to take his place. That's a story he told on a podcast. Not sure if he thought it was funny or something. Neil Gaiman was thought to be a nice guy until relatively recently. Story 2. Stephen Collins. He played a family man preacher on Seventh Heaven, and then it came out in 2014, he had molested prepubescent girls. Hollywood Demons on HBO Max did their first episode on him. Weirdly enough, he wrote an erotic thriller that incorporated a similar story to what he did, and he starred in that made-for-TV movie The Babysitter Seduction, maybe acting out a fantasy. Story 3. Actor Anthony Anderson from Blackish. From his Wikipedia page, Anderson was accused of raping a 25-year-old extra in a trailer on the film set of Hustle Flow on July 27, 2004. The alleged victim accused Anderson and assistant director Wayne Witherspoon of forcibly removing her clothing, photographing her naked body, and assaulting her. A witness claimed to have heard the alleged victim's screams and to have seen her run naked from the trailer, and she was treated at St. Francis Hospital. 48. The charges were dropped on October 6, 2004, because the judge ruled that there was no probable cause to try the case. Anderson was sued for assault in September 2004 by another woman who claimed that Anderson made suggestive remarks and then assaulted her in his dressing room on the set of All About the Andersons. On July 20, 2018, it was revealed that he was being investigated by the Los Angeles Police Department for another assault allegation. 49. Due to lack of evidence on September 4, the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office decided not to press charges against Anderson. Story 4. Kobe raped a woman, but no one likes to talk about that, or the fact that he had cheated on Vanessa with a ridiculous amount of women and she stayed for the money. Story 5. Marlon Brando forced Rita Moreno to have an abortion in the 1960s. The procedure was botched. She went home with a fetus dying inside of her body, and she had to return to the hospital for a surgical removal. She almost died. And then there's the brutal sodomy scene in Last Tango in Paris. Maria Schneider was not informed of the scene until it was being shot. It was an incredibly traumatic experience for her. She was only 19 years old. Brando was a talented actor and he deserves to be credited as such, but I believe that it's necessary that we cast light on his horrific treatment of women. Talented people are capable of monstrous things. We need to condemn those actions, not enable them. Story 6. Although some parts of social media might not like her, Oprah would fit the bill. She promoted some awful people like Dr. Phil and Dr. Oz. Plus, her friendships with Diddy, Weinstein and Cosby surely doesn't look good. Granted, nothing major hasn't come out regarding her like Ellen, but it's just a matter of time. Edit spelling correction. Wow, reading the comments, I realize the stuff I said is just the tip of the iceberg. Story 7. A lot of people still love Mike Tyson and think because he talks kind of funny he must be a nice guy. People think he is a nice guy who had a rough life growing up. He is a convicted rapist. He has admitted to beating women, and has been accused of SA by multiple other women. Dude's a piece of. Story 8. Naomi Campbell, great model, terrible person, despite having millions of dollars of her own, stole from a charity she set up. Story 9. Eminem, if he didn't want to talk to me outside his concert, he didn't have to, but he could have signed an autograph for Matthew. That's my little brother, man. He's only 6 years old. We waited in the blistering cold for him for 4 hours, and he just said no, that's pretty shitty, man. He's like his idol. Story 10. John Hamm did horrific things in college during fraternity hazing, including dragging around a pledge by his testicles in the claw end of a hammer. That is not normal under any circumstances. Story 11. Neil Patrick Harris and the absolutely vile cake or meat platter he made of Amy Winehouse shortly after her death. Don't look it up. It is so beyond disturbing. I'm upset I ever saw it, and for that reason I always answer this question when it comes up on Reddit. Everyone should know what a despicable, sick NPH is. Story 12. I'm not sure if anyone viewed him as nice, but Steven Seagal is a much worse human than you'd imagine. He's not just your regular male actor with a few SA accusations. He's had credible cases against him for human trafficking, and so many actresses accuses him of assault he was pushed out of Hollywood. Story 13. Oprah. She brought us Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, J.D. Vance, and John of God. She helped push Jenny McCarthy's anti-vax and Suzanne Summer supplements. She may not be evil, but she sure as makes poor choices. Story 14. Tom Cruise. Everybody likes him, but he is estranged from his daughter due to Scientology. Also, Chris Brown, still popular and doesn't get called out for things he's done like assault and abuse. Story 15. Gandhi slept with his nieces to test himself. Dude was a pedophile. Also, I think he basically let his wife die because he refused medicine for her. Can't really remember that though. Story 16. Jackie Chan had an affair back in the 90s with a woman who was 19 years younger than him, which resulted in a daughter. Allegedly, he has never supported her and they've been estranged her whole life. He also has had an off and on estranged relationship with his son. Story 17. That's easy. John Lennon. He was a petulant demon who managed to convince the world he was a humble pacifist. Just read up on him. You'll see what a violent, arrogant liar he was. Story 18. Kobe Bryant literally raped someone. Also, Shaq is just a really gross and creepy human being. When I heard that thing ABT him dumping a bucket of week-old urine on one of his teammates, Just evil and sadistic, absolutely disgusting. Story 19. I don't think anyone has been able to clean up their image as perfectly as Tim Allen, who has found a new virginity playing the nice relatable middle-class guy on TV, basically the same part show after show, not to mention Santa. He's the epitome of the conservative white dude now, not bad for a guy who pleaded guilty to trafficking cocaine, and would have gotten a life sentence if he hadn't thrown other drug dealers under the bus. Story 20. Jackie Chan is a total. Here's the full list of shitty things. 1. He beat his son. 2. He cheated on his wife. 3. His affairs produced an illegitimate daughter. She has been shamed and refused to be recognized by Chan, as she is a lesbian. So add some homophobia as well. She lives in poverty while Chan is obscenely wealthy. 4. He was named in the Panama Papers as hoarding large amounts of cash in offshore accounts. This might explain number 5. 5. He sucks up to the Communist Party well beyond what is necessary. I know people say, well, that's what you have to do in China, but let me contrast another Hong Kong action star, Chow Yun-fat. When there were pro-democracy umbrella student protests in Hong Kong, Chow Yun-fat appeared in photos supporting the protesters. When asked if it might affect his movie takings, he said, I will just make less money then. Jackie Chan, on the other hand, said that Hong Kong people have too much freedom. 6. When his son got caught smoking a joint, Chan said he should spend a night in jail at a public press conference and on social media. Regardless of what you might think about smoking weed, he was focused more on his own public image to do this at a press conference. Chan also admitted he was never around when his son was being raised. Chan is a total shitbird. Do not be taken in by his folksy movie persona. Story 21. James Marsden supported and defended convicted pedophile and child rapist in the children's film industry, Brian Peck, including being among many who wrote a letter of support during his trial defending his actions, and has not shown any kind of remorse or apologized to the victim. Story 22. Coco Chanel, most famous for her perfume, Chanel No. 5. Although a majority of people don't know about her collaboration with the Nazis during World War II, it's speculated that she used the outbreak of World War II to punish employees who had gone on strike in 1936. Thousands of women lost their jobs, while living it up with her Nazi boyfriend. She tried to use the fact that she was an Aryan and the owners of Parfait Chanel were Jewish to get the Nazis to hand over control of the business to her. It didn't work, because they had already given the company to someone else, who returned it to them after the war. She still managed to receive all the profit from Chanel No. 5 during wartime, as well as having the Wertheimers, the owners, pay for all of her expenses for the rest of her life. As for actually working for the Nazis, she worked for Walter Schnellenberg, who headed the German security service in Berlin. He was later tried at Nuremberg and sentenced to 6 years, but released early due to health problems. Chanel paid for his treatments and living expenses, financially supported his wife, and even paid for his funeral. She had fled to Switzerland to avoid retribution for collaboration, and wasn't punished at all. Documents released in the 2010s revealed that she directly worked with the Abwehr, including plans to take control of Madrid, and other operations to try and acquire favorable terms for surrender after it became obvious Germany would lose. But what most people remember her for is her perfume and revolutionizing fashion. Story 23. Where do I begin? Elvis dating a 14-year-old Priscilla when he was in his early 20s, or Michael Jackson going on trial and being acquitted for molesting children. Story 24. Haven't seen this one. Jimmy Page is pretty revered for a guy who kept a minor he was sleeping with in prison for 2 years while on tour, not to mention the whole thing where Zepp made millions without crediting or paying the black artists they ripped off. We won't talk about the fish thing because that may have been consensual depending on who tells the story, but it doesn't mean it wasn't weird. Clapton was an abuser and quite vocally racist somewhat recently for another guy who made bank ripping off black artists. Pete Townsend also did that, plus was caught with a bunch of CP on his computer for research purposes. That's just off the top of my head, but a lot of respected classic rock artists that still get airplay and sell out stadiums were sleazebags. Don't tell your dad. Story 25. Mr. Beast. I know several people who had no idea about the lawsuits and the allegations until I told them. So many people only see him on his YouTube videos, and don't see anything about him outside of the platform. On the topic of YouTubers though, people tend to forget that Joey Graceffa did content in blackface back in the day, and that Preston Plays allegedly ran an illegal gambling operation targeting children through his Minecraft server. Story 26. Michelle We West. One of my friends worked nights at a hotel. She wanted everyone staying there to be kicked out because she deserved the place to herself. When told no, she assaulted my friend, his boss, and got off with no consequences because of who she is. The stories I've heard about her are either the same or worse. Story 27. Joe Pesci was the following week's SNL host to Sinead O'Connor after she ousted the church. His monologue was a rage-fueled, comic-less tirade about how she should get the beat out of her. Specifically, he wanted to beat the out of her. Edit removed Tony Dalton as it seems to be unsubstantiated. Story 28. Neil Patrick Harris. Until a couple days ago, I was unaware of some of the super distasteful things he said and done. Was a bit disappointing to learn about. Story 29. Anna Kendrick is apparently horrible on set and mean to fans. Lea Michele is an actual nightmare on set with receipts to prove it. She straight up terrorized her castmates on Glee. Story 30. Hardly any of y'all read The Assignment. This isn't supposed to be a list of terrible things celebrities have done. It's supposed to be celebrities perceived as nice. And we got people suggesting Dr. Dre and Tommy Lee and Mike Tyson. Story 31 Bill Cosby is a monster, though kept an image alive to hide the fact. I fell for the facade with his comedy albums from the 60s, which I feel horrible about. Story 32 Marky Wahlberg in 1986. A then 15-year-old Wahlberg and 3 friends were charged for chasing 3 black children and pelting them with rocks while yelling "Kill the NS" until an ambulance driver intervened. Story 33 Haven't seen him mentioned. So Gary Oldman. Not only was he abusive to his first wife, but he also said people needed to get over Mel Gibson's anti-Semitic rant in the early 2000s. Story 34 Roman Polanski. Although long celebrated for his contributions to cinema, Polanski's career has been deeply tarnished by legal issues stemming from charges related to offenses involving a minor. His case has been a subject of heated debate about art, accountability, and the possibility of separating a creator's work from their personal actions. Story 35 Cheryl Cole. She's recently been given praise in the media for the way she stayed out of the limelight recently and been very private regarding the death of Liam Payne. However, let's not forget she attacked a nightclub bathroom attendant in 2003 and was convicted by the courts. Story 36 Kobe Bryant essayed a 19-year-old woman. When he died, everyone seemed to forget that fact. From Wikipedia in July 2003, allegations of assault were made against professional basketball player Kobe Bryant by a 19-year-old woman, resulting in criminal charges for felony assault. In August 2004, a civil suit was filed against Bryant for the same incident, and in September the criminal case was dropped and charges were dismissed when the complainant decided not to testify. The civil case was later settled out of court. Story 37 Mark Wahlberg has chilled out a lot in the last 20 years, but people tend to forget he used to pick fights with black kids and call them the N-word while kicking the out of them as a teenager, as well as Asian Americans. He also vocally supported a rapper who called for the killing of gay people. That said, he's admitted he was a drug-addicted idiot as a teenager, and seems to have tried to make amends and apologize. Given how early this all happened in his career, he was a minor when most of this stuff happened. He seems to have moved on for the better. He's still got a hefty ego, but at least he seems to keep it in check. YMMV on how worthy or not he is. Story 38 Boy George falsely imprisoning a male by handcuffing him to a wall and beating him with a metal chain. Might be more for UK Redditors this one. He seems to be forgiven, mind you. Story 39 Leanne Rimes, while hardly comparable to a lot of what's in this thread, cheated on her husband with Eddie Cibrian, also married at the time, so they split up 2 marriages. Story 40 Robert Wagner and Christopher Walken. Natalie disappeared while on a yacht with them. Ariana Grande, engaged in an affair with a married man who recently welcomed a child, cheats on nearly all of her partners or steals them from other women admittedly. The Donutgate scandal, the Blaccent, he cultural appropriation, her mean girl attitude, the entitlement, the Disney Eats fiasco for one, she has been known to be mean to fans often, etc. Story 41 Gandhi's main argument to his British oppressors was that he should be granted the same freedoms and rights as white people, and in return, he would support British rule including its oppression of black South Africans, whom he viewed as inferior at the time. Story 42 With all this negativity, we at least know that it's not true that Bob Saget raped and killed a girl in 1990. If you have any proof that Bob Saget raped and killed a girl in 1990, stop gossiping and go straight to the police with it. Story 43 Bill Cosby Danny Masterson P. Diddy Chris Brown Russell Brand Ellen DeGeneres Barbara Walters defended Hollywood and Charlie Sheen allegedly raping Corey Haim. Charlie Sheen John Travolta allegedly groped his massage therapist and demanded Kevin Spacey Andy Mike Tyson. Story 44 The comedian Bobby Lee admitted on a podcast about being in Mexico and specifically seeking out a worker who was sobbing and scared looking, likely a trafficking victim. He didn't choose someone who seemed willing and consenting, but a woman. He called her a girl at first and then backtracked and said she was an adult, so who knows, who appeared terrified and like wanted to be helped, not abused. I can't look at him the same way after hearing that. It's just appalling. Story 45 My thoughts are Ariana Grande. She is living a life of entitlement and believes that the world should bow to her every whim. It has only gotten worse since Wicked opened. In my opinion, she didn't have to stretch too much for the part of Gilenda the Witch. Story 46 Dax Shepard. I listened to Kiki Palmer's podcast where she interviews Jonathan Van Ness and learned about how Dax had JVN on his podcast a couple years ago and was saying homophobic things. JVN was pushing back and explaining to him why that way of thinking is problematic, even if that's not the intention. Dax, instead of listening, got defensive, to the point where JVN started crying. Then Dax released the podcast episode heavily edited so the ugly he was saying was left out. JVN also talked about how when he agreed to go on the podcast, he was told he'd have a say in what would eventually become the final episode. After that debacle, Dax and his team ignored JVN when he reached out asking them to keep their end of the bargain. So gross. Chaplin was a pedo. Story 47 John Wayne. I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility, the actor said. I don't believe in giving authority and positions of leadership and judgment to irresponsible people. Story 48 Oh man, this one always messes with men. You'd be surprised how often the nice image is just solid PR. One that always stuck with me was Ellen DeGeneres. For years she had the reputation of being super kind, fun, and all about spreading positivity, but then all those stories from former staffers started coming out about how toxic her show's environment was, and how she treated people behind the scenes. It was pretty eye-opening. Also, Jared Leto, people used to think of him as this artsy, quirky guy, but there have been some really disturbing stories about how he treats people, especially younger fans. Definitely makes you rethink that cool actor-musician vibe. It's wild how different public perception can be from reality sometimes. Story 49. Muhammad Ali was a horrible person to Joe Frazier, yet everyone thinks he's just the greatest boxer and guy ever. Joe deserved nothing but respect from Ali, even spoke to Congress to get him reinstated. Unreal. Story 50. Halle Berry is mostly deaf in one ear because of a severe beating from an ex-boyfriend. She hasn't publicly named who it was, but some people very strongly suspect it was Wesley Snipes. Story 51. Neil Patrick Harris, the utterly up Amy Winehouse cake, says enough about someone's character. He didn't even properly apologize or be publicly contrite when it resurfaced. Story 52. Prince's alleged mistreatment of his wife after she miscarried. Also Nicki Minaj, although I'm sure nobody perceives her as nice. She bailed her brother out when he was charged with child rape. He is now in jail. Her and her rapist ex-husband have also threatened a victim of his into recanting her story. Story 53. Johnny Depp and Marilyn Manson and their shared interest in the movie Salo. Anyone that's not familiar with the content, torturing and killing young children, their shared disgusting banter was kept suppressed during the trial. Story 54. In the UK there was Jimmy Savile, ran a show called Jim'll Fix It, sort of like Make-A-Wish dreams come true. Problem was he was a prolific pedophile. Story 55. Madonna, she's forever disturbing the dead, specifically her career. But on a more serious note, when she was adopting her Malawian kids and people started implying it was a white savior thing, she scrambled to do charitable things for Malawi itself to soften that. One of these things was a promise to build schools in the country, and claims completion of several at point of last asking. The reality is she built one, a few more were called off halfway through due to costs, and the rest she hadn't started were given up entirely when she realized people had stopped paying attention. Then the one school she actually built got shut down because the building was unfit for purpose. Story 56. Angelica Houston is a domestic abuser who brags about beating up Jack Nicholson like a prizefighter. Story 57. My God, from these comments I guess no one is safe. All this makes me think The Boys is probably a pretty accurate depiction of celebrities and famous people. I guess I knew it was true, but maybe 60 of them were, and criminals. I guess not, looks like everyone is. Story 58. Mario Lemieux, the famous hockey player, is widely considered a top 3 player of all time. If not for a mid-career fight against cancer, he may have challenged Wayne Gretzky, another piece of, as the undisputed best ever. He is universally loved and praised as a player survivor, and now owner of the Pittsburgh Penguins, the team he played his entire career for. He is so revered that players on any team are shamed away from wearing his number 66, making it unofficially retired league-wide. During his playing days though, he ignored his friend raping a woman in the same room as him as she screamed for help. Later on throughout his career he went to bat for other pests multiple times, making excuses for them and making sure they had jobs in his organization. Story 59. President Donald Trump has been accused of rape or assault by more than 25 women going back multiple decades. Hart and The Rock. Story 60. There was this one guy from Leeds, UK. He raised loads of money for charity wearing these horrible hoodies and medals. All the time being a nutter. He's well locked up dead now, but I can't remember the guy's name. TBH. It was something like Timmy Saddle, I think. Story 61. Competitive industries are the domain of pretty awful people, because to win the competition they have to do more than just be okay, easier and quicker to destroy your rivals. I'm not talking about criminal acts, but many psychotic behaviors aren't illegal. Fred Astaire was reportedly an absolutely lovely person, obsessed with his work, adored by his family, and the staff and assistants who came across him singled him out as wonderful, almost never a bad word said. He was, however, a once-in-3-generation standout talent and artist who was never challenged for supremacy in his field. The number 2 dancer of their age admitted that when audiences watched Astaire dance with his partner, it was the only time the audience was watching the man instead of the woman. He never had to resort to meanness or frustration or rudeness because he was just the best. Other people in Hollywood not so gifted or hardworking are probably really sometimes. It just doesn't make the papers because it's not criminal. And even when it is criminal it still doesn't always make the papers. Politics, music, sport, all exactly the same. Story 62. I have many, especially when the phrase rape allegations ruin a man's life statement gets tossed around. 1. Cristiano Ronaldo 2, Anthony Anderson 3, Dr. Luke 4, Mike Tyson 5, Roman Polanski 6, Dustin Hoffman and many more including the President of the United States. Story 63. People still go on about how nice Tom Cruise is. Actors say he's very generous on set. Forget the Scientology stuff. He has no relationship with his biological daughter because she isn't part of the church, apparently hasn't bothered to see her in more than 10 years. Story 64. Arnold Schwarzenegger lied about having a child with his maid for 14 years, probably would have kept it a secret until his wife found out. His wife was pregnant at the same time as the maid too. Story 65. Brad Pitt, despite there being literal FBI documents on his drunken abuse he inflicted on his family, and from my experience drunk abusers just don't wake up like that one day, it builds. The fact Angelina sued the FBI for releasing the documents but later dropped the case indicates to me there is likely more she has kept secret. The general public still blame Angelina for everything he did and the repercussions he has faced with his kids. while he is portrayed as the innocent victim. Story 66. Dr. Seuss racist cartoons promoting fear of Japanese Americans during World War II cheated on his wife when she was dying of cancer and she unalived herself. Story 67. Dalai Lama recently asked a child to his tongue, while being recorded, at a public event, "I don't think how it's possible that he is still a very much public person and has a faithful following, some kind of a psychosis." Story 68. Mother Teresa, she didn't do for the vast majority of people she supposedly cared for, instead letting many languish and die with either inadequate or no treatment. To quote Christopher Hitchens, this returns us to the medieval corruption of the church, which sold indulgences to the rich while preaching hellfire and continence to the poor. She was not a friend of the poor, she was a friend of poverty. She said that suffering was a gift from God. She spent her life opposing the only known cure for poverty, which is the empowerment of women and the emancipation of them from a livestock version of compulsory reproduction. Story 69. Mark Wahlberg is an absolute piece of 1986 attacks on black children. At age 15, Wahlberg and 3 friends chased 3 black children, throwing rocks and shouting racial slurs. The following day they harassed a group of mostly black 4th graders on a beach, again throwing rocks and shouting "Kill the NS." 1988 assaults on Vietnamese men. At 16, while under the influence of PCP, Wahlberg attacked 2 Vietnamese men. He struck Ton Lam with a wooden stick, rendering him unconscious, and later punched Johnny Trin in the eye. Wahlberg used racial slurs during these assaults, shouting "Vietnam Phing S." He was charged with attempted murder but pleaded guilty to felony assault, serving 45 days of a 2-year sentence. Once he was famous, he then tried to have himself pardoned and these records deleted, because he was now famous and different. That Fred Rogers, Navy SEAL sniper with dozens of kills, J.K.